Welcome, everyone. You are listening to Building Horror, a FEARZINE podcast where we talk to folks in the gaming industry who have a passion for horror games, who are developers, artists, creators, or just enthusiasts. I'm your host, Dan Morris, head and editor-in-chief of FEARZINE, and joining me today is Jeffrey Tomec, who is a gameplay designer at Wrong Organ, and has worked on games such as How Fish is Made and Mouthwashing. Hello, Jeffrey.
Hello.
Welcome,
Yep.
welcome. Thank you for joining me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, it's very nice to be here.
I'm very excited that obviously mouthwashing is really big in the indie horror space right now. And when you guys agreed to join us for the podcast, that was super duper exciting, especially because this is a new project for me within the magazine and trying to help us grow and expand our audience a little bit more. I very much appreciate you coming to talk to me today and tell us more about yourself, your story as a developer, and mouthwashing and other Wrong Organ projects that you can talk about.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to go over all of it.
Yeah, before we got going, you did mention a little bit that, you were surprised that there wasn't better avenues for folks like yourselves to talk about mouthwashing. So I'm happy that we could help with that.
Yeah, no, I think like podcasters and stuff, I think underestimate developers' desire to kind of like export their kind of vanity onto the public. Like the amount of we do so there's all of this work that happens in the background that you spend so much time working on and no one looks at it. And then like the interviews are for the one time you get to talk about all the stuff that kind of missed the eye of the general player. So I think a surprising lot of devs will leap at the opportunity to do this kind of stuff.
That's fantastic. Good news for me. Yeah, it's really cool that the amount of the reception that we've gotten for this podcast. A lot of developers are really excited. A lot of our audience has been really excited. So yeah, with that, let's get into talking a little bit about you, who you are, how you got where you are. You are the gameplay designer at Wrong Organ.
Yes.
Cool. How did you find yourself there?
Okay, so pretty much all us Wrong Organ folk have the same story of how we came together, because all of us are from the same class in the same school.
Wow.
So this school Future Games in Stockholm, Sweden. We went there, I think we're class of 2021. Now, and so every one of us were designers at the school. So all of us going to this game design class. It was like a trade school for making video games, and we early in the education worked on How Fish is Made, like very early.
Was that part of like a student project kind of thing?
It was like kind of half a student project, it was pretty much like it was technically filling in for an assignment that someone was like sick for. So it was so we had like a way longer deadline and freer reins than we actually would have if it was like the real assignment, if you get what I mean. So we get to call it an assignment, but really like we didn't have any of those limitations. We just kind of worked on something on our spare time. And so we made that game in like a couple months. And it put it out. We had no expectations for it, and then it did, like, okay, I mean, now that Mouthwashing's out, it didn't do gangbuster numbers, like, relatively, but like for us at the time it was a huge success. And even then we weren't actually planning to start a company off it. We were just like, okay, that was cool, time to go work at AAA or whatever. And then a little bit later we actually started another game. That game got canceled. And for some reason, that was the moment we were like, okay, well, now that we failed at doing it a second time, we got to make this a company, I suppose. And we ended up, so we start Wrong Organ and get working on Mouthwashing, which is first project, no more cancellations in the middle. Yeah, and I mean, now we're here today. But so my story fitting into that is the same as most people. I went to the class, we made How Fish Made together, and now we're here. We got some new members along the way, like poached from one class down of the same school. But yeah, that's kind of like our situation.
Nice. What led you personally to go into school for game design?
Oh, yes. I'm I'm just like one of those kind of basement developer hobbyist people, or I was for a very long time. I had no attachment to the rest of the games industry. I didn't know any other game developers. I just sat at home and tinkered on Unity and wanted to make stuff. And I was doing that for a really long time. Never shipped anything, but worked on a lot of games that got close. And then I kind of realized at one point, like, wow, this is actually a career path. Like, people do this professionally. And so I found out there's a cool school. I'm Canadian, but I heard about the school off in Sweden that does it. Already planning to travel abroad, so I ended up getting in and going, and kind of the rest is history. But it was a very kind of loosey goosey way of getting into it.
Nice. Yeah, it's kind of works out nicely that way when you talk about like you wanted to travel abroad anyways, and it kind of syncs up that way. Cool. And then you found your way now with Wrong Organ. You guys started the company. You've got Mouthwashing out, which is, of course, very successful in the eyes of horror fans in the indie space. You being the gameplay designer, what was there any special like reasoning that you got that role, or how did that work out as far as like the way the team was balanced and structured?
Yeah, so the whole team has been set up kind of is based off that original How Fish is Made development structure. And the so we really have to go back there for like why it's kind of been set up the way it has. And on that project, it was as simple as so one of our Johanna, who's our narrative and art lead, she was the one who conceived of How Fish is Made back
Oh,
before
okay.
we even started our school. Our school is actually portfolio based entries, so like you would send them like a game you've worked on, and so what she sent was this giant like game design document for like what How Fish is Made would look like. So like a plan for the narrative, some of the models, kind of just like this idea for a video game. And I've always been more on the technical side. So I got into the school and we were all sharing our portfolio pieces, and I saw hers and I was like, damn, everything about this game's kind of been done. Because like How Fish is Made is just like you talk to fish, right? So it's like if the fish are modeled and the dialogue's written and some of the levels are done, it's like, okay, so the game's like 60% complete already. And so all I need to do is make the walking part of the walking sim. It seemed pretty easy on paper. And so I was kind of it was really just like it was just a really cool project. It seemed like a very easy way to get something on the portfolio immediately. So I grafted onto it, and she had already worked with this guy Martin, who's our sound guy now, and he had done a great job on an earlier school project, so we brought him on too. And then that creates How Fish is Made. So we're already kind of split at that point between like I'm doing all our technical stuff and kind of the gameplay. But gameplay is a very kind of erroneous, kind of weird term when you're talking about like almost walking sim games. So really I'm handling like pretty much anything like technical code wise on the game, especially like front end, like what the player's experiencing, and then a lot of technical art stuff in the background.
Hmm.
And so we do that for How Fish is Made, and then on our next canceled game, when the team expands, we all become the leads of those departments. So what we did individually on How Fish is Made, now we're running that department on the next game, and then we kind of kept a lot of that for Mouthwashing. So that's kind of how I'm ended up where I am on it.
Okay, gotcha. So it's like a natural progression and growth from the original project.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm. And you mentioned that so this other student developer with you guys, she had done all of the groundwork for How Fish is Made. Like, do you know more on that? Like, how did that come to be, or how that idea formulated, or was that more of her baby?
Well, I know a lot. What I can share, I'm not sure, but the general gist is, I mean, all of our games are very, or all the games we've released so far, Mouthwashing and How Fish is Made, are very grounded in like kind of they're very fantastical representations of like very real kind of personal experiences. And so she was in a situation that I guess made her feel very How Fish is Made.
Yeah.
And and came up with this game in that circumstance, and then left to start doing game development and carried this like really cool game idea with her. And then we kind of grafted onto that. Now, obviously, to work on How Fish is Made or Mouthwashing, we've all had to become kind of experts in those stories. And so like there's a lot I could know about the themes and depths and kind of meaning of these projects, but very little I'm allowed to say about it because these things are all our secrets close to our heart.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
You got to let the players get in there and dig around and find the nuance in the seams.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, because there's a lot of like players. I mean, the nice thing, what we were kind of sad about with how Fish is made is we got some pretty good analysis of how Fish is made, but like there wasn't a ton of not a, like I think there was a Geller video that was really good, and then some others that were nice, but in general, like not a lot of it. You have to get really big before you start getting analysis content. We weren't like that big, and so with Mouthwashing, it's been nice to see because oftentimes you'll put in all these little secrets and stuff, but then nobody ever finds them, and you're like, God damn. And it's like but it's very important for people to find them themselves. Like that's kind of the kind of meta mystery of a game like Mouthwashing is the way that players' understanding of the story kind of develops even after they finish the game and talk to each other and find more hidden meanings and messages. And sometimes they find hidden meanings that weren't hidden meanings at all. There's something that we threw in and didn't think meant anything. And now they're like, oh my God, wrong organ, genius secrets in Mouthwashing. And it's just some shit I didn't know existed. But like, since I'm not telling anyone what the story is, they'll pick up on some thing. I think what you realize when you're in game dev is people ascribe a lot of there's a lot of intention behind a game like Mouthwashing. There's always less intention than people assume on everything. I think that's just like the truth in almost any creative medium, and it's there's a lot of benefits to just letting the audience kind of come up with their own answers, because occasionally those answers are better than your answers. Though I do think, Mouthwashing is very kind of tailored around delivering a certain kind of message, but still, you do get some of that.
Yeah, I think that leans well, especially in the genre of like horror or horror adjacent games. And like you can put up a mirror to that with Silent Hill 2, how much people put into those games that maybe is there, maybe it's not. Like there's a lot of subjectiveness, there's a lot of inferring reasoning, even to like, one of those famous quotes on Silent Hill is the whole window with there was a hole here once, it's gone now. And people instill all this meaning into what that is supposed to mean. And I think even the developers were just like, yeah, it was just a thing we put there.
Yeah.
Oh, Jeffrey, I lost your mic.
Hello, am I back now?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, no, and so that's the kind of mystery that often it's true. I mean, they didn't have a reason to put it there, but you got to let that whimsy build to an extent. So, and I will say, there's at least a couple times I've seen things from Mouthwashing where I have been like, yeah, it's one of those moments. Like it's kind of it's a hole in the wall kind of thing where it's not actually anything, but we'll like Silent Hill 2 people, maybe in 15 years I'll talk about which ones those were.
You get to finally, you'll have that day where you're looking at your watch or your phone or some sort of technical device that says, okay, it's exactly 15 years since we've released. I can finally take to the internet and share all these secrets.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I'm surprised with how many less, because with how Fish is made, I do really feel like there are still things to be uncovered that haven't been yet. But with Mouthwashing, they combine that shit a lot. It's actually there may be little things. I think if you were to combine all analysis on the internet about Mouthwashing, you could make the perfect summation of the game. I don't know if any individual has done it perfectly, but every part of it has been achieved by somebody. Oftentimes the best analysis actually comes from just some random guy in a YouTube comment section that no one will ever look at his stuff. And if you're a fan of these small horror creators, or I shouldn't say small, I mean Manly has millions of subs, but these kind of more niche end indie horror creators like Manly or Alpha Beta Gamer or something, and you're one of those people that leaves an 18 paragraph comment about what the game means, the devs are actually gonna read it, right? Yeah. Most of the time, I can't reply, I can't tell you if you're right or not, but there have been times where I read that message and I'm like, damn, he gets it.
This random person in these YouTube comments has it.
I think the most succinct how Fish has made analysis I've seen is absolutely one of those comments in one of those videos, for sure.
That's interesting. That notion of just being able to go digging through these the comments like that, and I think that people should be aware of that. That like absolutely, the devs are looking at these things and they're watching, and like every dev I've talked to, usually they watch people's like walkthrough videos or their play videos, and they're looking, they're paying attention. They want to see how people react to their game. Clearly, obviously.
Yeah, I mean you spend so long working on this thing. To an extent, you would imagine that like you spend so long working on it, you don't want to look at it anymore. Which there's a part of that as well that's true, but like I do think it's so rewarding watching content creators play the game after it comes out, especially watching people try to kind of put together the like mysteries you've laid out and stuff. It's really, really satisfying. So yeah, no, I think players understand how much devs do pay attention to all that stuff, like the likely, especially if you're talking about like a smaller game, that the dev like will actually see what you have to say, even if they're not going to respond.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because I can relate a lot of that to my own journey with mag design and development. And every time I have one of these podcasts and interviews, I'm able to start kind of correlating. Obviously, they're not the same entirely, but I've gone through a lot of the same whimsy and woe. Like when you said you don't want to look at it anymore, I'm like, I went through the same thing with making a magazine. I'm like, all right, I'm tired of looking at this. I don't want to look at these pages anymore. I don't want to look at these layouts anymore. I've had enough of it. But then when I see people getting the magazine and they react to it, or they're like, oh my God, it looks cool, or it feels good in the hands, it's just like, like it's this overwhelming sense of like satisfaction and appreciation to get that positive feedback. And of course, there's going to be, constructive feedback. But then you learn from that, and that's how you get better at your craft. And I'm sure you guys are doing much the same.
Yeah, I think the hardest read is the truly constructive feedback, because I think there's the actually not constructive bad feedback, which I just think is hilarious. There's some really funny things I've read about Mouthwashing.
Like fake feedback, fake criticism that's just people trying to be stupid or funny, and like, oh.
Yeah, there's some. I unfortunately don't have the liberty to be able to look. There's so many times where I'll read just some like heinous shit about Mouthwashing on the internet, and I want to retweet it because it's so funny to me. It's there, like people will say just like this insane stuff, and I'm like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen, but like I need to like keep this to myself. But I love like. Not this is an encouragement, but the like people's negative reviews, not people who are like writing negative reviews because they want to say something funny, but someone who just has the most like vitriolic random hatred towards like some indie game they play, and they go on this like tirade. It's always so funny to me when I read through them.
I wasn't sure if you had more.
No. No, sorry.
No, you're fine.
No,
I do that. Like, I actually love reading like review comments on like Xbox and Steam and stuff, and looking for stuff like that. I used to do a thing back in the day where I would try to have people guess a game based on the review, and like the review is usually one of those like just toxic vitriol or just people trying to be funny for the sake of being funny. And I always find this hilarious. Like some of my favorite reviews I've actually read was for a game for Death Stranding, like someone trying to explain Death Stranding, but it was one of those like they're just making shit up just to be funny, and it was just one of the most hilarious things I've ever read. But yeah, that's I love that you can do that too. Like I think it's important to be able to take the good with the bad, because there's constructive feedback, there's toxic feedback, there's negative responses, but then you can always gain something from most of those. But then there's some of those that's like there's no substance to this. It's just people like kind of like unloading or just saying stuff to say stuff. But yeah. Go ahead.
No, yeah, I mean there's a lot of that kind of stuff, and I think it's just like I think it's sometimes easy to have a higher expectation of like the internet that surrounds you than you would normally have, I guess. Like, because like if you're someone who's just been on the internet for a while, like you know what it's like. Like I've played games on Steam, I've read the reviews, like I know what the default format for that is, and like so there's a certain amount of negativity that it's like if you're getting, you can read these like scathing, horrible things about you or your game and be like, wow, that personally hurts me. But the reality is if you're getting 50% less horrible scathing things than the game you just played, then you're probably doing really well, and so it's like it's about having like your barometer set to where the internet actually is, because I think some people it's like when it turns around to be about them personally, they like really start to read into stuff they didn't. And like, because the internet can be like a terrible place if you're not ready for it. But I think, I don't know, I guess that's the benefit of being in the generation into game dev, where it's like I've kind of grown up on all this stuff, is that like the like weird negative toxic side is just like that's the standard. That's like, you know, you take the good with the bad, and then like, you know, there's obviously, I think it is really net positive, especially when you're making like cheap indie horror games. Like that's about as much you can get, like everyone likes you as possible. Once you start making multiplayer games, it's like you're living on an endless timer until your community decides they hate you at some point. It always happens. Even if you love the game, to be clear, like I have multiplayer games that I love and I play all the time, but it's like once you play a game for like 400 hours, you find some reason to be like, I fucking hate these devs. They don't respect me. They don't like, you know, it's like they're not doing the right updates for their players or whatever, and then you get real angry. But I think that's just the nature of the beast, especially when you're doing live service content. But thankfully, we currently aren't. So
yeah, especially live service games, you get those people who leave a review on Steam where they've got like 20 or 30,000 hours and they're like a 1-star review and like, this game is absolute garbage, and it's like, why'd you play it for 2,000 hours then?
Yeah, but it's so like there are games that I would leave that review for, I guess. Like there's games I have like 800 hours in that I mean I think I will say that I think there's games that are designed to like eat your time, and it is very cynical, and there are people that like escape them and then should be leaving those negative reviews. Like, you know, there's someone who's like finally like left the GTA Online trenches after like 10 years trapped in the mines or whatever, and they finally got out, and they do deserve to be like, you know, don't make the same mistake I did, please. Don't play it.
Yeah, I mean, I could kind of go on that about Destiny if I really wanted to, but I got to that point where I finally called it in on Destiny, where I love Destiny 1. I love Destiny 1, and Destiny 2 was great. And then over the years, it's just like, yep, I can't do it anymore. No more. No longer. I can't do it.
Yeah, no, I've heard similar things from a couple like Destiny refugees, but I haven't played the game myself, so I'm not.
Sorry, I'm super amused by your terminology and calling them like refugees or escapees.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not quite that dramatic, but I do think that like it is what it feels like sometimes.
Like, you have finally escaped the prison. I mean, that's what those games are designed to do. They're designed to like lock you in and keep you in that ecosystem, so it's hard to pull away from it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I've definitely known people that have like fallen in the live service hole bad with some of these games, and it is like, okay, like, man, you really should stop playing this. So like, this is becoming a problem. Which is why I just got into League of Legends like a couple weeks ago. Because I needed a hole to fall in to try and crawl my way out of.
You need that hole. I want to get into that, but I also want to give you a chance to do a little bit more on mouthwashing, and then we can get into a little bit more general questions, because obviously mouthwashing has kind of blown up for you guys. Is it still sitting at overwhelmingly positive, or is it very positive now?
Overwhelmingly, I believe right now. No, we there's like a little triage meeting every time it drops below 95.
Oh no.
No, and then it goes back up again, and it's all okay.
Yeah, so how does that feel to be sitting at overwhelmingly positive for the most part?
On a game this big, great. Like, I mean, your chance of keeping a high review score go down the more people you export the game to, because ultimately, like, Mouthwashing is apparently less than I thought, but Mouthwashing was always supposed to be a niche game, right? Like, there's not if you took every gamer and put Mouthwashing in front of them, the majority of them probably wouldn't like it, and that's by design. It's just like the kind of experience it is. So like the bigger the game gets, the more people who like will hear about its reputation, but they're the kind of player that wouldn't really like that kind of game, are going to like end up picking it up and then being like, oh, this sucks.
Like, wow, everybody said this was so good. It's terrible.
Yeah, exactly. And so you get more and more of those reviews the bigger the game gets. But I mean, that's just a symptom of success, really. And the game has reached so many more people than we ever thought it would. Like, we were expecting the game to do less numbers than How Fish is Made, just because How Fish Made was free. So that game did what in our minds at the time was huge numbers. We were like, okay, well, Mouthwashing's going to do, if it does that well, like if we get as many sales as Mouthwashing as we had like downloads of How Fish is Made on Steam, then we're great. We're golden. Like the company works. But it has been astronomically more than that, and it has been like super, super nice. I mean, we have no complaints.
That's awesome. It's really exciting to hear. I'm glad for you guys that it takes off. And of course, you said like there's the downside to success, because you're going to get those people who come into it expecting something, and it's not going to be at all what they were hoping for or what they thought they were in for, and they're going to be like, I don't like this. Every time this kind of idea comes up, I usually relate it to the explosion of Elden Ring, because Elden Ring blew up in the market and everybody was praising it and calling it one of the greatest games of all time. And then you get the flooding of your casual players picking it up because it was getting high reviews, and then they'll complain that the game was too hard, and they're like, make it easier. And it's like, but that's what makes the game what it is.
Yeah, there's always every popular, like the more big your positive wave is, the more of like a backlash it's going to kind of be after.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of how things wane in the space. I think there's some games that get hit by it more and less for like a couple of reasons. But I definitely, I think you'll always get like, because just once everyone's talking about it, people just get fed up with it. People are like, I just don't want to hear about Mouthwashing anymore.
Like that's
like that. Yeah, all anyone on my Twitter is talking about like this game. Like people, there's a lot of people out there that have never played Mouthwashing that will like forever have like a disdain for it just because like it's just something they were forced to look at for like way too. But that's just what having a fandom is, to be clear. Like it's the same with Undertale. Like I've never done an Undertale playthrough, and I obviously like most people, my impression is that Undertale is a very, very good game, right? But like my association with engaging with a fan of Undertale is significantly different to kind of how I view the game itself. And these pieces of media often get their kind of public perception is transformed by their community. Another great example is like, I mean, if you think about how the public perception of like Rick and Morty has changed since that came out to now, like, because like the show, I think it was a fine show. There's nothing wrong with it, and people loved it at the time, and it was like pretty good. And now people, like, you just think about it, it's like it is so associated with like this kind of like apex cringe that like you cannot think about that show without thinking about how kind of weird fans of it are. And I think that happens for a lot of anything that builds a fandom around it. It's just the reality of kind of the medium, and Mouthwashing does have a fandom, so we have kind of that second backlash tier to it as well.
To get a little bit more into Mouthwashing, I know you're not going to go too deep on it, but on the outside of it, can you tell us a little bit about like the inspiration for Mouthwashing?
Yeah, so let me think. I mean, I can say in general, like Mouthwashing is like How Fish is Made, in that it is based on, it's a very like it's a personal story, and the events of Mouthwashing, though like heavily fictionalized, are manifestations of a lot of like kind of different real world things kind of put together into one bundle. And that's what makes it kind of particularly difficult to talk about, because often the truest inspirations for the narrative of Mouthwashing are often things that are kind of like are very personal, but like in a more like just what media inspired us sense. There's kind of a lot of the ones you would expect. There's going to be like like Eva, Silent Hill. That's, pick any piece of survival horror, those two count. But the from like, there was a lot of films like Sunshine, I believe, the like space movie. I actually haven't seen it. It's not my inspiration,
but it's
oh, okay. It's apparently very good. I really should have watched it at some point working on the game, because it's apparently a big inspiration. Yeah. But like on my end, Signalis was a huge inspiration, like on the game side. I think that game is incredible in terms of how just how clean the aesthetic is, and like I really liked their interaction system, like when you go into first person, and a lot of Mouthwashing things are kind of like pale imitations of that. And so that was a big inspiration in a lot of places. But there was a bunch. I mean, like a lot of these kind of other PSX-y esoteric games come to mind. But when you're working on a game for that long, you find like new sets of inspirations on the way. Do you get what I mean? Like the amount that you run through in like a 1.5-year development cycle is is a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there's that leads into like trying to keep like scope, especially when you see something another game is doing and think, oh, that's really cool. Maybe we could implement that. But then it's like, okay, but we gotta manage expectations and stay in scope and not overstretch ourselves.
Yeah, the scope on Mouthwashing was interesting, like the whole story on it, because the game was supposed to be much smaller originally. It was a game that ballooned in scope, but it also is a game that should have ballooned in scope. Like when I think about what we initially wanted Mouthwashing to be, it wasn't nearly as cool as what we ended up with. So like I'm very happy with kind of what we settled on, and we didn't really end up we didn't end up cutting anything. We mostly ended up adding things later. Like and the game ballooned a lot kind of later in its development, and mostly through the need of just us realizing like there's just not enough here. Like this game just needs more kind of stuff in it. In a couple places, like just a lot of spots where we really fleshed out the story in ways that made it more impactful. And new kind of horror-y stuff we added, and a bunch of, because like Mouthwashing went a really long time without us really being able to find where the experience was, because it's tough with a game like that, because the whole thing was like when you're working on like something that's almost a walking sim, you don't have a gameplay loop you can fall back on, right? Because oftentimes you have a game where it's like, okay, you have the gray box, and the gray box is fun, and now you need to say, how do we make this a real game? But like a scene in Mouthwashing, when you strip it down to its base components, is really like nothing's happening. Like
It's a lot of dialogue.
I mean, a lot of dialogue, but like all of the, when I say nothing's happening, I mean the through line between all of these segments is walking and talking.
Yeah.
There's a lot of individual things that happen in the game that are like very high effort to make a scene a scene. But like those things aren't things you plan for in like pre-pro. Those are things that come in scene by scene later. So Mouthwashing is less like a game where we're taking like a core gameplay loop and repeating it and adding variety, and more like the variety is the game. So like when you're, and the polish is the game, like the dialogue being well written and the audio being good and the visuals being pretty are like the things that build Mouthwashing. So like I spent a long time sitting on these kind of core systems and these chapters of the game that are blocked out, like levels where, we just don't have the art yet. We don't have the audio yet. And we don't even have the dialogue written yet. We know what the whole story will be, but not all the lines are done. And I'm playing and I'm just like, wow, this sucks. Like there's nothing here. And it's just kind of having that faith that like once you put everything in, it will go from being like just a nothing burger to being like really good. We only really came to the realization of what the game would look like in its final form very late into development. All things considered, like what I'll say is like when we shipped the demo for Mouthwashing, that was the amount of the game we had. Like there was content added for our demo that we were like, wow, that works. Let's put that in the main game. So it was a very interesting kind of development process. It definitely had to shift a lot, especially when everything's so based around delivering this like very precise story.
Oh yeah, because it's so narrative heavy, independent, and then the way you experience it. I'm speaking from the little experience that I have playing the game so far. I haven't gotten super far in it, but I realized pretty quickly, like, oh, okay, it's more of a you're experiencing the story less you are playing. Like it's not like super heavy on action, except for like the certain bespoke moments where you have to take action as the player, but it does a good job of building up this sense of tension as well as almost a confusion because of the way the narrative is delivered. but in a good way. Like, I don't mean that detrimental at all. But it's like it has you constantly questioning what it is you're seeing and experiencing, and the way it flips perspectives from the different characters too. I thought that was really interesting. I remember the first time it flipped perspective, I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. I thought I was going to be this person the whole game through, but it's sharing it, I guess, from each person within that story.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of like Mouthwashing is very deliberate about kind of, so we rotate between two characters from the cast, and we're very deliberate about which ones we do. But more than it being character rotations, the way we consider it, I mean, it is you are rotating between them, but like the our kind of conception of how Mouthwashing is organized the story is we have three we had written the story out as three timelines. So that now a timeline implies like kind of some kind of branching from each other. That's not what I mean in that case. It's more like they all play linearly. So the story would, if it's like a big line, is cut into three segments, and each of those segments have like a key starting event to them and a key kind of ending event to them. And they all play linearly, but every chapter of the game, which is when we do that weird like data mosh cut where the screen gets all warbly, that's how we cut between two chapters, and any two chapters are always in a different timeline. But the timelines themselves generally play linearly to each other. So like you'll get you'll be before the crash, and then you'll either be after the crash, or the one that you haven't seen yet because you've only seen two of the timelines is after the crash, is what we have better names for it, but they're more spoilery.
Yeah.
So it's like
it's a secret.
yeah, you have like the point is you have these three, and what that really let us do when developing is we could make a script for the game that's almost more like a film script, because we have the story where we know like front to back this will be really this is really satisfying. Each one of these different like timelines has its own climax. We know we're going to cut between them in a sporadic order. We know all these events need to be here. But like when you're normally making a game, that's just one layer. Like, the story is satisfying, but now you have to put all this like gameplay shit into it. And oftentimes you have to decide the gameplay first and really have the story like follow the pacing of the gameplay. But with Mouthwashing, because we don't have to tell the story in order, we can make massive gameplay revisions without actually changing the story at all. Like, we can just say, oh, the pacing's bad, we have this like epic chapter where something super dramatic is happening after everything's gone to shit later in the game. We can just slide it to the start of the game if we want to, because like we're already telling it out of order. So it meant we had a lot of ability to like tailor the gameplay without messing with our story, which is important, because like the narrative of Mouthwashing, not just like making the dialogue in each scene good, but the kind of meta story we're trying to tell is really what every single thing in the game is meant to build towards. And so having a structure that allowed us to like edit that as little as possible and kind of move other things around it was like super important to making the game actually work.
Nice. Kind of reminds me of that movie Memento, and the way that kind of like shuffles the story pieces around to kind of intersperse things. Because if you play that movie in a straight line, it would probably be a lot more boring. But the way they shuffled things around made it really interesting, because you didn't know when certain scenes were playing in the timeline.
Yeah, no, that was another big, I think that was another big inspiration, actually. I always have trouble remembering them when asked, but no, I think that was another, I remember that one being brought up a lot. But yeah, no, there was that, and there's a couple other non-linearly playing movies that were like big, like this is kind of the how you do it, like the guidebook to making it actually work well.
The next
that we use
big one that pops in my mind is like Pulp Fiction, because Pulp Fiction plays out in weird order.
Yeah, I actually don't know if that one came up in dev, but I mean, you're absolutely right. It does play in a very irregular. That whole movie is very irregular, but I suppose that's the like kind of Tarantino guarantee.
With that system and that approach, which sounds like really dynamic, was there any like great struggles or hurdles that you guys as a team had to overcome?
I mean, the biggest hurdle is not really like, because the approach itself is like, it's easy, it lets you kind of cheat. and but then it is still a cheat, and that's the biggest problem in it too, in that, like, anyone can cut their story into a bunch of little pieces and shuffle them around for gameplay reasons, but making that actually work, like making that be a positive instead of a drawback for the game, is kind of the harder part. And we did have to do a lot of kind of reshuffling of stuff, and it also helped that our gameplay, when it does pop up, is very often more like kind of hallucination-y sequences, or not even hallucination, but more just metaphorical. It's like it's representative of something for our story, but like because it's not explicitly happening, we have a lot more ability to like kind of play around with those things. But when you step into that, because we're not the first survival horror game to come up with what if it was just a metaphor, bro, like that's that happens a lot. And the trap you can fall into very easily is making just like, the player's like, okay, I get it, there's a, like, I'm walking through a hallway and it's a new hallway every time I open a door, like but like this isn't happening, like there's nothing real, like there's no world you've pulled me into here. And like it's because like when in video games, the easiest thing to do is show the player 100 weird surreal things, it's like, but actually tying them together and making the more cohesive parts of the story and feel kind of physical enough to make the esoteric stuff feel esoteric and not random. Because random is like the default state of things in video games. It's like you throw a bunch of levels together in Unity, you have like a wacky horror surrealist thing. So it's a lot of it is just like limiting yourself in how much you do that and making sure that you still have that kind of core cohesion. And I do think we largely succeeded at that in Mouthwashing. But even then, I think there's some players that will play Mouthwashing and have at least one segment they'll pick up as like, okay, well, this, like, I get it. Like, I get the point. Like, bring me back to what's actually happening, please.
Fair. Yeah, that's something I look forward to getting more into as I get time to actually play the game and understanding that. So this question is going to be a bit of a burner because I assume it's not going to be something you can answer clearly, but do you have any insight onto what's Wrong Organ working on next?
Well, I mean, I obviously have some insight onto it
that
when
you
I can
could share.
Yeah, when I can share, which is obviously the implication of the question. So what I can say is we are working on something very different, like very different. Like I think this is kind of Mouthwashing being so successful is kind of the moment where Wrong Organ has to kind of define itself as a studio of like, are we a company that makes like narrative like walking sim games, and I think ultimately like what we want the message of kind of Wrong Organ to be is that like we are a company that makes weird games, like strange things that we're excited about, and we are perfectly willing to like shuffle anything about what makes those games around to come up with a new thing that's interesting and that we want to kind of deliver to the audience. So like I'll say we're certainly not working on Mouthwashing 2, and I think what we're working on is I don't even like what you would assume if I told you like you don't know what we're working on next. I think it's gonna be really different.
Cool.
But we do retain like that kind of horror vibe is like pretty foundational to us. Like we do that. There's a core kind of feeling behind how Fish made a Mouthwashing that will probably be like a consistent through line between all our projects. So we're not going, because when I say that, like, because there's sometimes like you get the like Darkwood, like the devs go and make like a kids like soccer game next or whatever, and like I mean I respect it a lot, like just following your heart like that, but also to be clear, like we're not making like we're not making cutesy games. Like, we are still in horror. It's just a very different side.
Yeah, and nothing against that either. Like I know plenty of other devs who make other games besides horror games, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's nothing against that at all here. It's like you guys do what you got to do, Well,
I mean, it's not just. I mean, seriously, like I mean, the new game they're making also looks quite good. But like if you're a Darkwood fan, like you're like no, because I really wanted like not to say a new Darkwood, but just something else. Like they were so good at it. They were so good at it. Like Darkwood, I think is like probably my favorite survival horror game, at least on a gameplay side. And so I was like, for me, it was like my personal like 9/11 was seeing the announcement for the new game, but also like that's not doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the new game. I just but I realized that like there's enough horror developers doing that I do need to be clear when I say it's not what you expect. It's like, okay, it's like kind of what you expect though. It's like kind of it's in the middle.
Yeah. I would say because of the success that you guys have been seeing with Mouthwashing, that kind of sets you up in a good spot to experiment and try things too. So, you guys have a little bit more freedom to be like, well, we really want to do this, so why don't we try that? And if it doesn't work out, we can do this other idea or other project. I mean, I'm assuming that it's going to give you guys a little bit more freedom and flexibility to try things that you're wanting to mess around with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the stress has been greatly lifted. Because like of Mouthwashing, we were very worried Mouthwashing wouldn't make money, and that was kind of a constant stressor on the studio. Now the next game doesn't really have to make money for us to be fine because Mouthwashing's just done so well. And that is super relieving as like an artist, like a position to be in. And yeah. So I'm really happy to like be able to just experiment. And make something cool. I think like ultimately like we have ambitions to get into like very like kind of narrative and gameplay heavy stuff like we really want to do like a long serious single player like narrative game that's not just like that's kind of beyond the scope we've been able to achieve in the past. Because I think like so far like how Fish is made, Mouthwashing is in a lot of ways like kind of the direct upgrade of how Fish is made, of like everything we did there we kind of just do more of in Mouthwashing. And I don't think you can get more Mouthwashing. Like you're not like the Mouthwashing is a thing for the kind of narrative it wants to tell. It's the perfect lengths, that kind of thing. It should be like a film. And so when we're looking into a new thing, it's like, okay, we can't just make Mouthwashing bigger again. So we really need to be able to find a way to like we know we can sell a good story now. So it's like, okay, what can we do on top of the story to make it a more like totally fulfilling gameplay experience? And that's like the long-term ambition, I think, is to just be able to make like something as impactful as Mouthwashing, but with more like a more actual video game, I guess. like like that has all the other bells and whistles around it. But that'll be a while. We're still not trying to jump up our scope. We're not on any 5-year developments yet or anything. Yeah.
I mean, it's still a relatively small team, right? Like, how many people work at Wrong Organ, give or take?
Currently, like 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't plan to get a ton bigger. To be clear, even if we want to increase kind of the scope of the games, the art style, we're kind of at like a hard cap on fidelity. Like, I don't really believe. I think games grew in fidelity a lot quicker than they grew in ability to actually achieve that. Like the amount you can produce in a game seems to have gotten lower over time in contrast to like I like think about this, for example, like okay, like Resident Evil remakes, very good games, but I think like Resident Evil 3 remake, right? That game had to like cut out content from the original game. Like how many more developers and time and money do you think they had on the remake compared to the original? But just the expectations for making a game now of like what you have to deliver on graphics and stuff and fidelity are so high that like making the same thing you made 10 years ago with a tenth of the team size actually takes longer now. But what if you try to like truly modernize it? And I think some of those, I think those kind of games are really cool, but I do also think those returns have been diminishing, and that players have kind of noticed that like in the content scope of their games has dropped in a lot of ways. Like even games to their direct sequels, the sequel feels like they had less ability to play around and do what they wanted because there was just such a large kind of production cycle behind every individual thing.
I mean, there's a up and down to that, because like I feel like there's the original Resident Evil remake that came out on the GameCube, which took the original game and expanded on it and added new elements and new gameplay. And Resident Evil 2 remake did that. But you're right with Resident Evil 3 remake, it's almost unrecognizable compared to the original game because they changed and stripped a lot of the, especially the later game content from Resident Evil 3.
Yeah,
But it's like,
even
go ahead.
Resident Evil 4 lost stuff, like the remake. Like there's a whole boss fight missing
Yeah.
from the Resident Evil. And again, like all of those remakes are really good. Like I enjoyed all of them. I think 3 was very clearly like the one that had the least time and budget
Yeah,
behind
they turned
it.
that
But, like, I
around
still
really
enjoyed
fast.
Yeah, and I think it was probably a little too fast, but like I really like all those games. My point is more towards just like I think the nature of like trying to make video games that look that good, like there are drawbacks that we aren't ready to account for. Like there is a give and take, and the take is worse to give like sometimes, like when you're doing a Last of Us game or something, but like I think the default for games being this like uber high fidelity Unreal Engine, like pretty graphic stuff. I think people are kind of shooting themselves in the foot, especially in smaller teams. And like, even if you gave me 100 developers right now, I would much rather just spend that on content scope, on just making a game that has where it's like you never know what's going to be around the next corner because we have the time to make like a new hero asset for every second thing you do. That I would have it make it so the one hero asset looks twice as pretty for 10 times more work.
I'm also very much a gameplay over visual person myself as far as the graphics go. Like I prefer a solid, fun game. That's where, like I love a game like Legend of Zelda. The game isn't mind-blowing graphically by any means, but it's fantastic and fun to play. I love, losing myself in those games. Or even a brand new release. I just picked up the Dynasty Warriors Origins game. Brand new game. It looks good, but it's not like pushing the boundaries by any means, but there's hundreds of hours of gameplay and content there, and it's done well, so it's fun.
Yeah. Sorry.
You're fine.
But yeah, so the yes, regarding like I think there's an interesting thing to be said about, so it's like there's fidelity in and then there's actual like how good it looks, and I think those are like a very different, because like I think because I often consider myself like a gameplay over graphics guy as well, but my opinion on this has kind of developed a lot as I've gotten into game dev, especially because like there are some games that just look objectively horrendous that I'll play a lot of because I think they're great, and I think like to be a game that's good, you have to excel at like a couple key things, and one of those things you can just have great gameplay and that can just work, and sometimes you can just have like really good graphics and sound and atmosphere, and that's kind of more where Mouthwashing falls into, but I do think there's also like an amount where you can have a game that looks beautiful but with low fidelity visuals, and I think that's what we've kind of been pushing, and a lot of other indies, and on a higher level I'd even use an example of like Elden Ring's a great example of this, I think. So it's like the game looks beautiful, like it's a beautiful looking game, like it's one of the most gorgeous worlds put into gaming, but on like a fidelity level in terms of like the complexity of the rendering and the amount of work it takes to make any individual assets, so we're talking like poly count, just like the amount of extra like PBR bullshit layers of like how many of your specularity maps and your metallicness, and then like how the like diffusion of light through the skin and the little hairs on every thing with skin and all of this stuff, it's like you can get into these levels of detail, but once you make one character that has all of that detail, now everything else has to match that standard in the environment, and like ultimately you can have these micro details all be perfect but have the kind of macro game kind of still look like shit, like look really bad. And I think the reason like people play Elden Ring and they're like, how did they make a game this big and this beautiful? And I think the answer is that it's like they've created a content production kind of cycle where they can put the effort into the places that really deserve it and like get a ton of bang for their buck, but like the average detail of something you see in the world is actually a lot lower than it would be in a comparative AAA game. There's a lot of like slop assets and like reused things in Elden Ring, and textures where you look from like really high up and it's just an endless plane of the same 10 meters repeating or whatever, things that would be considered like unacceptable and certain kind of game dev environments. But like if you just stick to it and know like where you can milk to get serious progress, it's going to be really, really big, or like you can do a ton more. And so when I say like inflating content scope with increased budget instead of like fidelity scope, I don't just mean like gameplay. I mean like I think you can make the graphics and the gameplay ultimately look better by just sacrificing the complexity of the realism, like how much you have to push every individual thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a whole tangent.
No, I get it. I think it works along with what we were getting at, and I understand, because there's like, if you're looking at a 3D environment within a game, whether it's a actual 3D or 2D, but I'm talking about like the canvas that you as a developer paint in front of the player, each asset's going to have varying scopes of complexity, and there's ways to simplify some things so that the game runs better or looks smoother, but it doesn't have to be this like insanely huge giant asset that's taking all sorts of resources. And there's ways that you as a developer can kind of mold that in a way, and that's like you were saying as Elden Ring as an example, is I'm sure there's little tricks and there's way to do that to help make the game look really good, but it's not relying on like super duper high end, high resolution, high complexity assets at all times to pull that off.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. And I think the games that look the best are ultimately the ones that like even the games in the higher fidelity angle that look the best are still the ones that know how to cheat when it's the right time to. And I think one of the downsides of democratizing these tools to make stuff look pretty so much has been that people often get crushed under the weight of their own kind of ambition to make something that looks photorealistic. And I think in indie, there's a lot of games that I think would just be better if they looked like, not even stylized, but just what realistic graphics looked like 10 years ago or whatever. Would be like they'd be able to produce a lot more effective content with those kind of like by opening up their kind of limitations a little bit. And so it's something, this is the change we really want to be kind of the part of the manifestation of in the industry, is like as we hopefully find more success and grow and scale, like we really want to kind of practice what we preach here and like start making bigger games, but keeping it and kind of still in this older like graphical style, and showing like the ways we can push the limits in other directions. Still have like super cool shaders and pretty visuals and cool set pieces, and then they're like really compelling gameplay, and have all of that happen with what appear to be like very limiting graphical constraints. I think there's a lot to be done there.
Oh yeah. I think that's something too that like the AAA space will hopefully kind of get the hang of or learn. I don't know if it's ever going to happen, especially with how weird and contorted the AAA space is, but that's something that like, they could learn a lesson, especially with indie games and indie developers getting more and more prominent, because they're able to find those dynamics that's working for them to make the game look better without being overwhelmingly crushing because of how like long the big AAA games are taking to produce, because they're putting so much time and effort into making it look more cinematic or more like a movie without doing it in a reasonable way.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. I wanted to ask you a couple of more personal questions, and then we can start wrapping things up here. You kind of already said it, but I was going to ask you, what's your favorite horror game? But we could also go deeper than just one.
Yeah, so I feel like favorites are always difficult because
that's hard. I can't answer that question.
Yeah, if you were to ask me favorite game, just flat, like not only horror, that's probably the one thing I can answer pretty well, which is I think it's Sekiro. I've racked my brain a lot about this question of like what I think the best game is. It's obviously a very hard question to answer, but like I don't think I can think of an experience I both enjoyed that much and can find that little issues with. Like I do think it's one of the tightest kind of cleanest experiences I've had in gaming. I love that game. But then like in terms of horror, it's more complicated because I actually wasn't even a huge consumer of horror before helping with all the wrong organ stuff.
So
I've
it's
got a
more new.
lot more. Yeah, a lot more into it since. There's things that are kind of like, I think horror is such a broad genre. Like I think when people think of, I think it's one of the reasons a lot of people say they don't like it. Like a lot of people tell you they don't like horror games, or they don't like horror movies, and that I think a lot of the time is because what defines a horror game or movie to them is so limiting. Like because there's a lot of, like, you can find a game in almost any genre that overlaps with being called a horror game. So like everyone will find, like, you could hate Mouthwashing but then play something like Buckshot Roulette that's like a gameplay focused like gambling thing. That's also a horror game, but like it's a totally different kind of experience, and say you like that. But I think a lot of people just wouldn't even classify that as horror, even though I think it absolutely fits the bill. I think the same thing happens with film. And so my point in this is, like, there's a lot of games tangential to horror that I really like, Darkwood being a great example. Absolutely a horror game, but for me, it's like what pulled me in is that I really like the gameplay loop. But I didn't play like something that's more traditionally viewed as a horror game like Amnesia, that's more like of a experience kind of thing. Though I have since played Soma. Amnesia got spoiled to me because I watched like PewDiePie play it when I was a kid for like 400 hours. So like it's kind of I don't know if I could really ever have a first time experience of that. But I played Soma. Oh my god, Soma was so good. It's crazy.
Nice.
It's like amazing video game.
Yeah, Soma's still on my backlog of games to play eventually.
Yeah, it's like Outer Wilds and Obra Dinn, where it's like everyone will tell you to play it, and then they'll be like, okay, what do you do in it? And they'll be like, you just play it. You play the game. I can't tell you anything about it, but you play it. Because it's like all these games are so the pudding is so like you can't. It's the whole point is that like they're kind of subversive in a way where it's like nobody's allowed to tell you what's actually in it or they'll ruin it.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, just play it. It's great. You'll love it.
Yeah, horror is such a broad spectrum, and it's something that we talk about on the FEARZINE side of things of like what constitutes horror. But the thing about horror is it's completely subjective to the individual, and like it's such a broad spectrum. Like you can see or find horror in things that aren't classified horror 100%. And then you've got the different elements, you got different genres, you got different subgenres. I often reference like Luigi's Mansion. That's horror in its own right. You've got games that are made for kids that are meant to be horror that are more like spooky, like haunted houses and things. You've got cute horror, you've got survival horror, you've got hidey horror. That's what I call games like Amnesia. I call those hidey horror games, which I'm not a big fan of myself because I just get bored. I like action, I like combat, I like survival horror, I like inventory management. But then again, it's all subjective. It's what is fun for you as a player. So it's always interesting to me. And like I asked the question of what your favorite horror game is because you have no idea what somebody might say. Like a lot of times the answers are surprising. And then, even talking about like your favorite game specifically, like Sekiro, you're not the first person to talk to me about Sekiro on this podcast. Like I had a whole deep dive discussion with someone already about Sekiro and just like Souls-likes and Bloodborne and Elden Ring. Like these games come up all the time for various reasons.
Yeah, I think it's hard to escape from Software Shadow for very long, I think. I mean, it's just those games just had such an impression for very good reason. Like, they're so goddamn good.
I still remember the first time I played Demon Souls, and that to me, the first time I played Demon Souls, I remember thinking to myself, this feels like a horror game because of the way it's structured and the way it's built, even though it's not really geared as a horror game, but it's the sense of you get scared as a player to die because you lose your experience points in that game, especially the original game when I first played it. And I realized that if you die, you drop your experience, and then when you die again, it's gone forever. And that creates a tension in you that makes it like you get afraid to die.
Yeah, I think for me, like what Souls-likes really captured was like this feeling that I think a lot of the gaming experience I've had that are really the most evocative have come from this, which is a feeling that like you're playing a game that's indifferent to you, in that like the world you're engaging with and the mechanics are obviously designed around you, the player, in reality. But like they don't like things aren't. It doesn't feel when you play a Souls like things are changing behind the scenes to fit you. Like if you mess up, there's defined consequences. Every button always does the same thing. There's generally no predefined combat states, whether you're in or out of combat. It's just like you could be standing there and then something could run out and it could kill you, and they're not going to play like a song for it. Like you're just dead. And it's like, and there's this feeling, it is almost like a fear that gets created when you realize that it's like you're no longer playing in like an amusement park ride that's kind of designed around like making sure that you're always at the edge of almost feeling like you're under pressure but fundamentally aren't. And that's like a game like Dead Space. I love Dead Space, but I think like that has dynamic difficulty, obviously, right? Like dynamic difficulty works great until you know that there's dynamic difficulty, because at a point you're like, okay, so if I waste all my ammo, they'll give me more ammo, and if I get too much ammo, they'll give me less ammo. So it ultimately, like, the systems, the more you start to understand them, you realize that there's actually less depth than the game initially implied there was. And with Souls likes, you really get kind of or like FromSoft games, you get the opposite feeling. You feel like you're like, wow, they like really, it almost feels like they just don't care about my experience. Like I'll play it. No, the secret is they really care about your experiences. They're insanely tailored and handcrafted, but it's about creating that kind of feeling in the player. And I think they do an amazing job at that. And that to me is kind of the defining aspect of what makes them work so well. It's the same reason when the difficulty discussion comes up. That's my biggest point on the side of like not adding it. It's just like the feeling that there is nothing you as the player can do to affect the world beyond just engaging with the game's own systems. Like knowing that there isn't a way out, like a way to press escape and turn down the difficulty or whatever, has like a mental significance, even if you're a player that never would have done that in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Know what I mean? At least in my mind. But anyway, yeah, Souls-likes are interesting. I mean, they're a wonderful, wonderful genre of game, or at least FromSoft's ones are.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of most of them. Like pretty much every Souls, like I'd like to dip my toe in and see if it's something I want to invest in. So I also wanted to see if there's anything that you're playing right now that you're liking or don't like that you want to mention.
Oh, that's a good question. Let me just check. Oh yeah, wait. This is wonderful for a horror podcast. I've just been playing through the original Resident Evil 4. Finally, I never did before. And played the remake. Now I'm playing the original. Original's really good. Like a really good game. Very inspiring. Like I think they do a ton of. It's weird to me because we've had so many games inspired by old Resident Evil games with the tank controls and stuff, but RE4 is such a weird brand of like kind of the halfway point between the tank controls and like more of a modern third-person game. I find it really evocative, and I'm surprised that there's not more things that have tried to replicate it since.
Yeah, like the stop and pop kind of gameplay.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's really fun. I've just been enjoying the game a lot. I have very few critiques. I find it interesting how seamlessly the remake added so much extra depth to like especially the story side of it, and like because I do think I think the remake's a side grade in a lot of ways, because I do think like the original game was just going for something incredibly unique, and the remake is going for something that's a lot more traditional, I guess. Like a lot of the wackiest things about the original game's gameplay have been taken out for the remake. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think the remake's great, but like I do think there's kind of these key differences, but if there's one thing that's objectively improved, it's like, wow, those cutscenes and just the general quality of the story and writing, and how much, because you spend half the game walking around with Ashley, it feels like, and like they never say anything to each other. Like it's just it's they're not like their relationship in the original game is, I mean, it's just kind of the nature of the age of the game, but it's like you can, in the remake, it's so much more built upon just like them actually interacting really at all beyond just start going, Leon, like yelling at you all the time. I understand why people found her so frustrating in the original. But I'm actually I'd say I'm super surprised by how good her like following you around in a way that doesn't feel annoying is. Because people are still very angry about the original game's escort quest kind of vibe. But like I'm really impressed by how good the like pathfinding is and stuff on her. That like she never gets in the way, pretty much. Like she's very good at like sneaking behind you the second you aim. So you don't end up shooting her or ducking under.
I
And
think I've
like
accidentally shot her a few times, but for the most part, yeah, she's pretty good.
oh, the second someone tries to carry her away, it's like feels like it's almost the point that you could accidentally shoot her.
Oh
Like
yeah.
that's the difficulty of it. And it's definitely like you do have to be careful. They want you to have to be careful. Like it is supposed to be an element of the gameplay, but I think I was in like I played a lot of games that have an NPC following you around. You're not supposed to kill, and I think I was surprised at how much this is probably the best version of it I've seen, despite it being a game that is like one of the first games to do it as well.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so I anyway no yeah that game's very good. I've been playing that. I've been playing some Straftat a good bit. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's
Mm.
it's a bit more the niche, and it's a wonderful game. It's made by the devs of this game called Bobdy from a while back. That was like a vertical exploration game in this big uh like Soviet-y style very geometric city that you explored, and it was like a no combat kind of atmosphere piece game.
Hmm.
And it was pretty interesting. And then they turned around and made a 1v1 multiplayer, almost like Duck Game, but first person, where it's like you spawn on a map with one other player. There's like 100 maps in the game, and you fight to the death 1v1. There's no like starting loadouts. All the weapons are placed in level, and like it's a different weapon set for every level. So like you have no clue what you're getting into every time you spawn. Super cool game.
Hmm.
I was like, it's like and the art style is super distinct. Like you once you see it, like you would recognize it instantly seeing it a second time. Anyway, very very cool. But yeah, that and then League. I have nothing to say about League that's meaningful. The people have been talking about that game for 12 years, and I'm like a week in on it. I got nothing to say. I play it.
Yeah.
the
I've
yeah,
never
no
been big on
meaningful
the MOBA
commentary.
games. Like I've played League, I don't know, once or twice, like a decade ago. That game is super old at this point now, and it just never really did anything for me. I've played other games that are like League, or I see the draw to MOBAs, but just it's one of those things where it's hard for me to invest my time into a game like that.
I felt exactly the same way for a really long time. I've had a kind of gone through stages of being like super into different games, especially in multiplayer. I was started being a Siege kid back in the day. Played a ton of Siege, and then it was Counter Strike for a bit, and then or Counter Strike on and off for a very long time. Hunt Showdown was the one that really hooked me. I played so much Hunt, and still occasionally do. But I was never into like MOBAs and stuff. And I think they're super hard to approach. But like just and I tried playing MOBAs before and did not like them at all. But for some reason it just clicked for me like a
Hmm.
couple weeks ago. I started playing it. I guess it was like I just I it takes like kind of a totally different approach, especially for a shooter player. Like I guess I had to think. I think like it's easy with MOBAs to come into it with some mindset of like, I've played character action games, I've played these semi MOBA likes like Overwatch and stuff. Okay, so it's kind of like that, but just I click the move. Well, that's lame, you know. But like, I think there's something about like once you get into it where you realize that it's just like a numbers game, and it's almost like playing an RTS, but you
Hmm.
control one of the units. Like it's just in your that kind of strategy of working with a whole team, and that feeling of like, because in a games like Counter Strike, once two people see each other, one of them dies almost immediately. Like a lot of the game is guessing what's happening and the things you can't see. And League's just such a weird game because you sit there for 40 minutes, like half of it you're sitting in a lane with another guy, and you're just staring each other right in the face. You can see everything he does, he can see everything you do, everything you have down to like numerical values, everything in his kit, what it does, and like and you're just doing these tiny incremental health damage values to each other as you and fighting over like single like minion kills and stuff, and you're like, I am 7 gold up on you, motherfucker, you're nothing to me. And it's like that feeling of just how like that tight competition where you're constantly doing these like mind games with another person and it's totally kind of exposed. There's almost like a weird like chess like nature to it that I've found myself very encapsulated by recently. But I totally get your perspective, because I had zero nilch interest in these games for the entire first like 20 years of my life.
I can't appreciate the notion of like going back to something and it clicking, because I've definitely had that before too, where I've played a game or a genre that I didn't like before, and it's like, oh, this is kind of fun, and I kind of get it now, and I'm getting into it. And there's definitely the thought process with the MOBA that it's like, yeah, like I like RTS games and I like hero shooters. You know, there's a good chance that if I play a MOBA, I could get into it. You know.
Yeah, no, I think so, absolutely. But yeah, I've been definitely that's how I felt when I got into horror, is that I really because I was one of those people that was like, I wouldn't really like horror stuff for a long time, and I've been trying to be more careful about the kind of how fickle I am about my own opinions on things, I guess, because I'm realizing that like what happens is you'll like a genre of game, you'll play every game of that genre, and then you'll watch like content creators play all the games in another genre you don't play. It's like, I'm not going to play that game, I'll just watch someone play it. And then you realize, like, you get into that genre, you're like, god damn it, like all the best, great, like goat all-time things in this genre, I just like secondhand experience through someone else. Now they've been ruined for me. Like, I can never have the first time. That's how I feel about Amnesia. I'm like, I could never have. I experienced that game before I thought I would ever want to play it. Now I'm like a prime consumer for a game like that. Yeah. But I've just I know everything about it. Like, I'm kind of, and I was so lucky to have that not happen to me for Soma, because like it would have been tragic for me to have been spoiled on that game.
I'm very picky on that regard. It's like, I won't watch streams or let's plays of games that I've not played myself already.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to stick to, but you definitely get a lot of, like, when it does pay dividends and you finally pick up that thing that you've been saying you're going to play forever, and you, like, it actually comes around and you haven't been spoiled on it, it is pretty magical. Because I think it's so hard to deal with your own expectations going to a new game, like, of, like, even the expectation of yourself to have fun playing that game if you've heard it's good or whatever. And I think the best thing is stumbling into a genre you have no expectations for, of just some random game that you kind of heard was good and got for $2 on Steam that's been out for 15 years, and then it just like is amazing, and you're like, holy fuck, like this is transcendental.
I can actually think of the most recent game that did that to me was that Bayonetta spin-off game that came out a few years ago. The what is it? I'm blanking on it. It's or Bayonetta something Cereza, the little witch, and I can't remember. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But they did a spin-off game of Bayonetta that's not like Bayonetta, because all the Bayonetta games are those over-the-top action games, and then this is more of a like kind of cutesy storybook adventure game, but it plays out a little bit more like an action RTS, not RTS, but like action RPG. And has a whole different art style, whole different look, a whole different take. And I got that game came out to me because I got offered it to do a review a couple of years ago. I would have never played that game otherwise. I had no interest in it. And as soon as I started playing it, I'm like, oh, this is actually kind of fun. This is kind of interesting. And I ended up like blitzing through the whole game in like 2 or 3 days. And after I put the controller down, I was just like, that was fucking awesome. Like, holy crap, that was a fun game. And I went into it with absolutely no expectations. It completely blew me away.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is like it is a really, really good feeling when that happens. And yeah, I find it very weird. It's also, I think, part of this was like, because it's difficult with the new games, because like games, whether it's a live service game where they release it and then they're going to kind of fix it later and you need to decide when to play, or it's even a game that's just too hyped and like you're so wrapped up in like the hype cycle for it that like ultimately it's really hard to like have kind of the purity of enjoyment of like a new game that's just come out. And it's something that I think about a lot in my own consuming habits. It's why I've tried to like swear off early access games, because like I'm tired of seeing a game that I'd be interested in, playing it to death until I don't like it anymore, and then it comes out, you know, and now it actually has all the content. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I played it 2 years ago. Like, I'm not sure if I'm interested anymore. I hate that feeling. So I've really been trying as just like a player of games to be very to try and like just see a game that looks cool and be like, yeah, I'll drop some money on that and play it instead of being in the whole cycle of excitement before. Except unless it's a FromSoft game, in which case I'll be in the chat every live stream on some like tiny games conference, like going like, where's Silksong? Where the fuck is Silksong? Why aren't you showing it? Like whoever's little indie game is showing a trailer. I mean, like,
you're that guy. You're the guy that's constantly poking for Silksong in those live streams.
I'm kind of just like a lurker on everything, but in my heart, I'm saying there was a group of friends in a Discord call live streaming the conference, going like show my game, you know. Anyway,
I think that's hilarious because like literally like I feel like every conference I've ever watched live that has comments and like there's always that one person going, where's Silksong? Show me Silksong.
No, absolutely. I was that for Elden Ring back in like that. So I'm not a Hollow Knight guy. That's just what the thing is now. Back when it was the Elden Ring hype cycle though, like I was there at every event that even slightly could have Elden Ring at it. Like begging and pleading.
Yeah.
And I don't regret a moment. It was a lot of fun. That's actually how I got into watching game shows. Now I watch all of them. But I'm so sad. I just missed the entirety of E3. Like I just wasn't there for it. Like I just didn't watch. I didn't really consume much games media back when that was happening, and I'm pretty sad because it has downsides. It was pretty cringe. That's kind of what I'm there for, though. I just love the experience of those weird, a little bit too corporate, kind of awkward game shows. Like
E3 was tough.
Yeah, but it's like I find so much like a weird enjoyment in watching those kind of things. I'm almost like the modern game shows that are better at it, where they just show you a bunch of trailers. Like those are objectively better, but like I do sometimes miss the weird cringe stuff.
I wish I still had it. There was a point in time where I actually bought a DVD recording of E3, and I think it was like E3 2005 that you could buy. It was like a box set DVD, and you'd watch the DVDs, and it was like 90% watching some dude on a suit talking to you about their business models and their business plans, and then doing like tech demos and showing off like, you know, the engine work that they're building on. And it's like super, super boring, especially if you're just a gamer. Like, show me trailers. Where's the next Devil May Cry? What are you talking about? I don't know. And like I used to buy those things and sit there and consume them and watch them, and they were super awkward. And 90% of the time you'd finally get to like, all right, here's Capcom's presentation, and it would just be a dude in a suit comes out like, here's the new game from this studio trailer. You know, then the suit guy was like, yep, these developers have been working hard. Here's the next trailer. You know, and it was like really awkward and dry.
Yeah, so perhaps maybe I think there's a specific era somewhere in the middle is what I'm probably really like was what I'm sad. I'm not sad that I'm pretty happy to have missed out on, honestly.
Yeah, you're probably looking more towards like 2010 to 2015. Yeah, that's where it really started to become more of a show.
It's when they realized they wanted to like appeal to gamers but had no clue how to, and you always get these like super awkward like I'm with the kids kind of shit going on. Like that's really that's the kind of stuff that I really love. Like it just and you still get some of that. I feel like every games conference is stricken with some amount of just like strange kind of awkward jokes of some guy standing up there and you're like, bro, get off the stage.
Like, all right.
But in my heart, that might actually be my favorite part. Like the as much as in the moment I'm like, get out of here, I want to see trailers. Like that's part of the experience. It keeps pulling me back.
Yeah. All right, sir. I think I'll not take up any more of your time. Very much appreciative. Thank you again for taking some time to talk to us. Before I wrap things up, is there any final thoughts that you want to get out? Anything you want to share? Anything else that you want to put out there to words to the fans, words to other developers, anything along those lines?
Not particularly. I could give a lot of platitudes, but like I don't really have anything meaningful to say. And what I'll say, I'll shill though. I'll shill. Anya plushie, we just announced it. We posted the tweet with the picture, the U2's one, like a couple hours ago. Well, not hours ago now. Now it's weeks ago. Weeks ago. You already missed it. You might have already missed the whole run of the. I'm so sorry, the prospective viewer. But no, it's awesome. I'm so sad you missed it because it was going to be epic. Anyway, I have nothing to say. But it was nice being on, man.
Yeah, I thank you again. It's been awesome, and I'm very appreciative. I get a little redundant when I try to close these shows up because I'm always like, "Thank you so much." I don't know what else to do but keep saying thank you. So I'm glad that you took the time. I'm glad that you enjoyed being here, and maybe we'll get you back on sometime in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very much enjoyed chatting with you, and just I love getting to learn about the games. I love learning about you guys and the development process, as well as just shooting the shit about games. That's one of the reasons I like doing podcasts, because I can sit here and just talk games all day. But yeah, I'm going to shill myself a little bit and say, to everyone out there, thank you for checking out this podcast. Hopefully you're checking out FEARZINE and finding us on our website. Maybe you've gotten the copy of the magazine. Maybe you're going to get a copy of the magazine. But we appreciate you being here. Thank you for being a part of the wholesome, horrifically wholesome community is what we are calling our loyal fan base. Which has been a term coined by my number 2, Maria, which has been like, we're sticking with it. We're going to start making stickers. Maybe we'll put that on some t-shirts. But yeah, make sure you check out How Fish is Made, everything from Wrong Oregon. Check out Mouthwashing. Find them on Steam. Maybe someday that maybe you guys are working on other versions. Probably can't talk about that, I assume.
No, I can't say nothing that had already been announced.
Yeah, it's all good. But yeah, check out Mouthwashing if you're interested in like super weird, like psychedelic horror narrative games. It's out there. Like you said, you guys are trying to make yourself a name for yourselves as making weird shit. So I'm all about it. All right. Thank you again, and we'll see you guys next time.
FEARZINE.